and we think of faith, we want to see, unfortunately, we want to see great things happen so we can be famous. Sometimes. Maybe you guys are a lot more humble than I am. Okay? So he goes into the story. Okay? And which of you, having a servant plowing or tending sheep, will say to him when he has come in from the field, come at once and sit down and eat? So we don't have servants there. We may have employees. So usually you send your employees home. Usually you don't have them over for dinner, right? And he says, but will not rather say to him, prepare something for my supper, and gird yourselves and serve me till I have eaten and drunk, and after it he will sit down and eat. So here's the order of what he's talking about. But think about this. Here he is talking about faith. And Jesus pulls out this story of the servant. Does it seem odd?
Well, he's trying to show him
He
something.
came to serve.
Okay.
So,
Did it seem odd to the disciples?
yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
They were looking for the kingdom. They were looking for God to do great things in the kingdom. So maybe it did seem odd to them, but it seems odd to me that, hey, I'm thinking about this great faith. And here Jesus says, okay, there was a servant. He was in the field. And he came back from the field, came back from working all day. And if you have a servant, you don't say to the servant, hey, come and eat. You say to the servant,
Serve.
make supper.
Right. Serve me right there.
That's always the every night, who's making supper? So we have a Facebook chat, and it's always, who's making supper tonight? And it's always like, I don't want to make supper tonight. Somebody else, I was working, it's always an excuse, I was working all day, I can't make supper tonight. But somebody has to make the supper. Although I'm a bad father. I'm like, oh, I got adult kids. They can find something to eat. They can eat cereal. There's not any.
They can make their own.
They can make their own. Not like those of you who still have small children. But so he says he'll prepare, and so that's what the servant does. And then that's what Jesus says. Does he thank that servant because he did the things that were commanded him?
Nope.
I think not. What do you think about that statement?
It's his duty.
It's his duty. Do we tend to expect to be thanked for what we do?
Yes.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Okay.
Depends on the situation.
What about at work?
Nobody says thank you.
Bro, in the army, did the sergeant always thank you for making your bed? Huh?
No.
That would be reverse psychology to cause you to have a heart attack, right? And so Jesus asked the question, does he thank the servant because he did the things that were commanded him? I think not. Does this seem harsh to us? Okay, seems harsh. I mean, we tend to say thank you, I think, a lot. Do I mean it? I guess, I don't know. We should be grateful, and we should have, so we're not discounting the need for being thankful. He said that doesn't happen all the time. And notice what he says, so likewise I say to you, when you have done, here we go, all those things which you are commanded, say we are unprofitable servants, we have done that which is our, what? Duty to do. We've done that which is our duty to do. Think about that for a minute. So we talked about duty Sunday. And then we started out talking about the emotions, and then we started, brought it down to that Josiah said, all right, these are your duties, these are your obligations. He set up, he didn't take a volunteer list, he set up people. So, and he's saying to us, we're unprofitable servants. Now, do we think of ourselves as unprofitable servants? Do we tend to think more highly of ourselves today or more lowly about ourselves today?
Think more highly.
More highly. What is the reason for that?
Pride.
Pride?
Human nature.
Human nature? Is there anything deeper?
I think it's kind of pounded into us now by society. You always have to just be proud of yourself and don't care about what other people think.
Okay. You get a trophy for participation?
Showing up.
Showing up?
Maybe we feel entitled.
Okay.
I think we feel like we contribute a lot more than we really do.
Okay. Anybody else? So how does this relate? When Jesus said increase our, so what's the connection here? Increase our faith, you're an unprofitable servant.
You never measure up to God's standards.
They want to do
more?
Excuse
They should
me?
be doing more without complaining?
They wanted to increase their faith for the wrong reasons. Instead of having a servant's heart, they wanted to be in the limelight instead of doing the dirty work.
Does it take more faith to be in the limelight or take more faith to work behind the scenes without complaining?
Behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes?
Because no one know how it's getting done, but you know how it's getting done.
And
And if you're in the limelight, it's not good, because if you behind the scene, God sees everything that you do. And you're not supposed to boast about things that you can do.
Can you think of a teaching that Jesus said that might explain this a little in the Sermon on the Mount? Anybody? There's a couple of illustrations he gave on the Sermon on the Mount about this.
Blessed are the meek.
Blessed are the meek. He said something about giving. Do you remember? What did he say about doing your alms?
in private, yeah.
He says, if you do your alms before men, what does he say? You have what?
You have your reward.
You've already received your reward.
Oh, yeah.
So when you do it in front of men and you get praised by men, you receive your reward, in a way.
Thing called the volume button.
Right? So think about this. This is the thing that struck me meditating on this passage, is that increase our faith to do our duty. And he's not saying you're unprofitable. He's not saying you don't measure up. Jesus is using a contrast here. And he's contrasting the disciples' ambition for their faith to increase with the reality of being a servant. Do you remember what Paul said in 1 Corinthians 4 about being a servant? Did anybody know what that word means when he uses that word servant in 1 Corinthians chapter 4? Have you ever heard that?
Is that bondservant?
Yes, but it has a very deep meaning in the Roman culture. And has anybody heard that before? 1 Corinthians chapter 4. Verse 2 says, moreover, it is required in stewards that one be found faithful. Does anybody know what this word steward means? You've never heard? So, who powered the boat during the Roman times? The slaves.
Slave.
How?
Rowing.
Rowing. You ever see those movies?
Yeah,
Yeah.
with the paddles come out
So-
the side of the boat ship.
Yes. So this word means under oarsman. In other words, the lowest part of the boat. And you've seen them. They'll whip them, and they can't leave. They're in chains. Paul said, "That's what I am, a servant." Paul said, "I'm an under oarsman. That's my position. That's my position in the church. I am an under oarsman. I am a servant of Christ." And so again, it takes faith, great faith, to be a servant. Right? Have you ever struggled with not being appreciated?
I think everybody has.
Yeah, I think we all have. I think we all struggle with not being appreciated, with being struggling and taken advantage of. And so here Jesus is saying, okay, you want great faith? You want to be a servant? Okay, a servant is not glamorous. It's not glamorous. And being a servant really is it can be it's not the, how can I say it? It's not the comfortable stuff. Right, we can do the stuff in the church that's comfortable. But when when you have to deal with you're serving kids, and then you have to deal with difficult parents, or you have to deal with just different circumstances, or people taken from you, or whatever. It is a difficult time. I don't know if I told you the story last year. I may have told the story. I don't know. Maybe you didn't. I didn't say it in church, but you remember when Joe was bringing those kids from JFK to play basketball. So they wanted to stay and play basketball. So I, all right, stay and play basketball. I'll bring you home. Well, one night it's 9 o'clock, and one of the kids hands me the phone, and it's the mother screaming at me, saying she's going to call the police. And then I look on my phone, because I had my phone on silent from Bible study. And I look on the phone, there's calls from the Enfield police. So here I am in a white van. A white van. I pull up to the lady's house, and the police is right there. And I got out, and I tried to apologize to her, she wouldn't even. And my wife and I had been over there, we met her. And it was funny. But being a servant's not glamorous. It's not a glamorous thing. And sometimes I think we've gotten too comfortable in the church, and we like to do the things that are glamorous. It's not glamorous. A servant's work is never done. We're not going to be done until Jesus takes us home. A servant's done. Work is never done. A servant should not expect to be thanked. And then a servant does what is expected. He does what is expected. So let me ask you tonight, how does your faith being increased correlate with being a servant? What does that look like for you? But in other words, do you see the connection that Jesus is making in this story? Or maybe you see something else. What do you see in this story? What's the message Jesus is trying to get over to his disciples? What do you see here?
Feel better about serving.
Okay, feel better about serving. That's a good one.
You serve to serve, not serve to be worshipped by man.
Okay, serve to serve. Anybody else?
I mean, it just gives you a longer view perspective. Because if they hear Christ saying this, and they see what happens to him, knowing that he, put aside the glories of heaven to come to earth to serve. And if God himself says it, you take it a little more seriously than if just one of the disciples decides to say it.
Okay.
And so if God himself saw that this was of eternal value to serve, then his disciples also should see that it is of eternal value.
Okay. Yes.
Just kind of piggybacking on that, and Jesus does in other parables talk about, the talents and how there was an unprofitable servant there as well. And I think what he's doing is slowly teaching the disciples about faith and about how they were to be profitable. And I think he got the point across because the disciples, turned the world upside down. So I think he knew that they were going to need to know that it's not about, casting out devils and walking on water. It's about, being profitable, reaching the world.
Okay.
People, or about people, not performance.
Yeah. I was gonna say, Paul said in Acts chapter 1 that, not to be ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for his power of God, and so the salvation is Jew first, also to the Greek. So I think having more faith can help us serving, because if we are ashamed, if we have a lack of faith, it can be a hindrance to getting the gospel out to people.
Okay, that's good. I think what Brent said something that look at Christ, and if you follow the steps of Christ after he gave them this message, he washed their feet, then he went to the cross.
Yeah.
And Peter, I think part of serving is that we have to have the faith that God will work through our service. Because sometimes we feel like our service is vain. That God knows our service even when others don't see it. And sometimes I think there was we had a work day one time, and there was a couple of, we've had good work days and bad work days, but there was a work day we didn't have so many showed up. And I think I said to one of the men, I said, maybe God didn't allow everybody to come to see if you were here really to serve. And then I said, well, there's not a lot of people, there's a lot more jobs to do, so you can serve even more. And God does that, and he's done that with me. I mean, we all see ourselves in this, where we're serving and we're like, where is everybody else? And why isn't everybody else here? And I'm here, and I'm always here. And if everybody else would be like me, the church would be a lot better place. And that okay, and then it comes back, well, why are you serving? Jesus said, when you've done that which was your duty, you'll say, we're unprofitable servants. Because when it comes to the cross, Christ dying on the cross, did we bring anything to the table? We didn't bring anything to the table. There's nothing that we're like this servant. We have nothing to offer, nothing to bring to the table. It's all by God's grace. So, as I said Sunday, real duty comes out of love and gratitude for what Christ did. So that's what we need the faith for. Lord, increase our faith to be patient, humble, dutiful, joyful servants.
Amen.
Get them all in there. Help us have that faith. And I think of Hebrews where it says, for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of God. So he was looking forward to, when he went through the suffering, he was looking forward to the joy that was going to be there. And we are much better off than this servant, because we're also sons. We're not really, we're servants, but we're sons.
Well,
And we've inherited all things with Christ. And so we have this attitude as a servant, but we're not a servant, we're a son. And heir with Christ. And so that's why we of all people should have joy in serving. Because of who we serve. All right, any last thoughts tonight?